All right, boom. We are live. We are recording. Kim Barber, what is up, my friend?
Hey, how are you, Josh? Good to see you.
Oh, dude, doing awesome, man. I'm so excited to have you back on. It's been a minute.
I know, right?
And you guys, if you haven't watched Kim Barber's first interview, I'm gonna have a link below. But Kim is just a real estate agent, team leader that is on absolute fire, continues to dominate, continues to crush it, and has been very versed in this space. Before she even got into real estate, before she became a realtor and then a team leader and doing all the big shit she's doing now, used to be a short sale specialist, if you want to title it that, for the banks. During the great financial crisis, was processing short sales and leading departments, processing those, all the short sales during that last housing market crash, then pivoted into real estate and just kicking ass. And, but Kim, before we get into, cause I got two main things I want to talk to you about here today. One is, what you're currently doing and how you're adapting to continue to grow your business during these crazy times, all these crazy changes that we've seen in the last couple of years, but then also get an idea of, what you're doing to prepare for where things might go in this business, because I think we all are kind of like, know that something's up.
I know.
Like we're all like, don't know how this is all going to play out, but
I think you might be the only other person that 2 years ago agreed with me when I was like, dude, we're going to tank. Like it's happening. Prepare now, like get ready. And Ben thought I was crazy. He's like, oh, there's no way. But, maybe it's bad to say, but I love it. Like last month, this has been so fun. Like I've been showing my buyers, and I have for the first time in years, agents calling me, hey, you saw that house, you're submitting an offer, and normally it's hard to even get them on the phone. Oh, I have 15 offers. I don't even know what they are, but it's nice. It's getting back to normal. And I see a big sinkhole in our near future.
Yeah. And I know you and I have had a lot of conversations on this, but man, there was no way that the math worked out where this market didn't implode in 2018. And that's where I just started beating my head against the wall and then started going down insane rabbit holes of really just trying to get a deep understanding on how our financial institutions work and the manipulation within them. And when I say manipulation, I'm not talking about anything evil. I'm just talking about, how quantitative easing truly works and how global capital impacts, what's happening here domestically. Cause I'm like, if we're a true capitalistic system, this doesn't pencil out, and it shouldn't have lasted past 2018. And theoretically it didn't pass 2019. A lot of people don't understand this, but in September of 2019, the shadow banking system, so the repo market system collapsed, and there was over a $5 trillion bailout from the Federal Reserve. Otherwise, we would have. I mean, to put that in perspective, that was as big of a bailout as all of the 2008 great financial crisis. The only difference is they were ahead of it instead of being behind it. So then,
it's not the public eye.
Nobody heard about it. Then 5 months later, COVID happens. And all the stimulus, I mean, it's just been craziness, with that. So, let's jump into first though, because man, you've been, so good at adapting. And one thing I always love about you and talking to you is how resourceful you are. We were having a conversation of, when you got your first investor call, you just run with the ball, whether you understand it or not. You're so resourceful and you figure shit out.
Well, it's funny because like you were talking about, the market collapse, whatever, like, because in my head, the market collapsed in 2020, but because the government was irresponsible and, Americans were irresponsible, you can't see it, right? They had the foreclosure moratorium. So, and that was the funniest thing. I heard a podcast one time, and they're like, oh yeah, the foreclosure rate is below 2%. And I'm like, duh, it's illegal. Like, unless it's a vacant house or whatever, like we couldn't. And that's when I talked to a buddy of mine over at Chase in 2020, when everything was going to shut down and stuff, and Home Partners was shut down. A lot of the investors weren't buying. Everyone's kind of in panic mode. And I was like, hey, there's no REO, dude. Like, are you getting a new job? Are your kids going to get like ramen noodles for Christmas? And he said are you kidding? He said, we just hired 88 attorneys. We're just ramping up because they had so many files in default, but they can't issue a notice of default. They can't start the foreclosure process. So what we're looking at, like what the public sees, yeah, it's true. There was less than 1% in foreclosure, but they're not seeing the default and what's going to hit, when the foreclosure moratorium lifts or when the government stops sending checks. Me and Ben got freaking two checks in the mail, and we're like, why? They don't even ask if you need them. They're just passing out money. And I don't know. I just feel like we haven't really seen the whole picture of what, of what's happening, like, behind the curtain or whatever. But the banks have been preparing this, from what I know, for the last year or two.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we'll definitely, cause I definitely want to talk about getting deep into, what you're hearing from the banks and what your thinking is and what you're planning for, let's just say, the next 24, 36 months, and so forth. But first I want to get into, the immediate, because it's, at the end of the day, we can speculate, we can, but what really matters is we got to have cash flow coming in now today. And you're seeing the market shift, right now in your market. And, what are things that you guys are doing right now, that you're doing right now, that's working really well? And what are some of the shifts that maybe you've made since, because it was like the market was, a healthy appreciating, you can even call it a seller's market, up until the COVID lockdowns.
Yeah.
Then from there was a period of time, depending on what state you were in, and how severe the shutdowns were, if you were essential or not, where there was, a bit of a freak out on everybody's behalf. But then it just catapulted into this beast that nobody's ever seen before, which has just been stupid. And there's been so many adjustments. And so what are the, adjustments that, you've made and that you are now making to go out there and do the high volume that you're kind of doing on a month-to-month basis?
Well, first of all, we talked about this before, options, like giving buyers options, no matter what the market is, because our primary clientele is buyer based. And I mean, even over the last few years, I had buyers that were well qualified. They had their pre-qualification letter and they couldn't get a house. So at that point, they were going through like a third party institution, like a rent to own type thing, Trio, Divvy, Dream America, Home Partners or something. And they were getting the houses bought in cash, and then they were buying them back a few months later, and they were willing to take the hit and stuff. And now where I'm seeing that the rates have gone up so high that it's not affordable anymore. Somebody that was, could get into. So in our market, an entry level, like basic bitches house, like starter home, is probably $350. And when they were qualified for $350, as soon as the interest rate changed, now they're qualified for $275. Like, it was a very drastic difference. And so that's where I'm working with those specific buyers on either, and it's hard because you have the conversation with them without really knowing anything. That's the hard thing I think about working with buyers. Like, okay, well, here's, what I think, or historically what's happened. Because a lot of my buyers are waiting until interest rates drop or they're able to qualify. And a lot of them are going the rent to own route, because a lot of them are seeing now, all right, we couldn't buy anything for a year, 2 years, whatever. And now the prices are $50,000, $100,000 more than they were before. So for them, if they can afford the rent every month, they're not taking the risk. Home Partners is taking the risk, right? If they buy a house at $500,000 and in a year they decide they want to buy, that's when they call me. They're like, hey, value my home. And I'm like, oh, cool. It's, you can probably sell it for $470. And they're like, fuck this, right? So they put their notice in, they get their deposit back, and then I help them buy the house down the street and save 50 grand. Like, it's a win-win all the way around. And the biggest thing is when there isn't a buyer pool, like if you don't work with investors or whatever, and there's really not traditional buyers, like back we saw it in 08, 9, 10, right? Like, they were lending kind of to like Jesus and his lineage, basically only. Like, it was so hard to get a loan, and that's going to happen again. Like, it is. Institutions are getting tighter on it already. Rates are going higher. So when that happens, like, real estate is always a lucrative industry, 100% of the time. Like, even if you look back to, the darkest of days in 2009 or whatever, like, shit was being bought up all over the place. But at that point, it's being bought by investors, it's being bought by these big box companies. There's always a market and there's always a way to make money. So like, if you're a buyer's agent, transition to the buyers that are investors, right? Learn about 1031 exchanges and cap rates, and learn how to put together a rent report and profitability for long-term investors that you'll want that monthly income, right? What's their monthly net proceeds? Investors, the short-term ones, they're going to be blast, dude. In the next year, any of you, if you don't already, start freaking working with flippers, because they love this. Like, already right now, the fact that they can get an offer accepted is like God's gift. So, but learn how to work with the investors. You have to learn how, and Ben's actually the best at this because he's the best at valuations and everything, but you have to learn how to look at your MLS strategically, find the properties that are highly likely to be able to be flipped or resold for those short-term investors. And you have to know, okay, it'll cost about this much for repairs. This is what the repaired value is going to be. Like, you have to learn how to work with every buyer and every seller, including those investors. And they're it's funny because they're incredibly hard to work with and incredibly easy to work with, because once you show your depth and your knowledge, like we have investors that call us and they're like, hey, Ben, where should I list this? They don't even look and they just do it because we've shown them over and over that the values come in where we say they're going to. But finding those people is easy, and marketing to them and sending them properties. What we used to do at the beginning is I would go groom through the MLS and find awesome flip properties, and I would put them together and I would blast and send them to everyone, hey, these are fantastic flips. I can get them, I can submit an offer for you. And we did have people, that responded and that were super eager. So there's always a way to make money in the industry if you know what the market's doing and who your target audience is. And moving forward, the target audience is going to be the big box investors, the rent to own companies, and investors like small local investors, I believe.
So if I were to summarize everything that you just said, like to put it to a single point, seems like the key that you're explaining and trying to get across to everybody is the importance of being well-rounded, so you then can adapt. Because I mean, we know that real estate has historically always traded hands, always has, always will. So like the market's always good. Yeah. It just might be good at times for a different group of people, whether that be, traditional sellers, traditional buyers, whether it be investors, whether it be institutional investors. But when you're well-rounded and you have this knowledge base, because it's always like one of them is always going to be more active than others, for sure. Like, okay, you and I lived through 2008 through 2012 and, REOs and short sales. There was a lot more of those happening in our markets than there was traditional, where, now today, it's kind of, my business is kind of almost split evenly between rent to purchases, like through Home Partners of America, institutional investors, and then our traditional buyers and sellers. It's kind of, if I were to split it down, it's probably about a quarter, with that, but it allows you then to adapt to whomever's buying and selling in any given market, because you've developed those skill sets and you know how to serve. Like, real estate is the product that you master. Then you're asking yourself, okay, who is buying and selling right now? Who is after this? And then, because you're so well-rounded, you can then pinpoint whom it's good for.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I love real estate. Cause it's not like freaking like, makeup or the trending car or whatever. Like 100% of the time, everyone needs a home. Like, real estate will always be a valuable market. And to touch on this, like you were saying with the sellers, I think the biggest thing that's going to be a huge adjustment for sellers, like a listing presentation, I'm going to add, like in my listing presentation training for my agents, I'm literally adding an entire section on education, because people, especially younger people, right? Like the millennials and what's the next one? Next Gen X or whatever, like people that really weren't old enough at the time during the recession to really see and understand it, right? All they've seen is you can list it for anything. You have multiple offers, you pick, you're the king, you win, right? But it's hard because now, like the last 2 listings that we had, it was literally, we listed them right like the second the market turned almost. And it's interesting because like, luckily we had that conversation with them, because I anticipated that, where I said, like, we have to list conservatively. Like, if they want to list, we had one that wanted to list at 600. And I said, you know what, like those search boxes go by $25,000 increments. Like, if you list conservatively, you have a higher likelihood of driving a lot of traffic, getting a lot of people, getting multiple offers. And really in the turning market, the only way to get a fantastic offer, like we have been seeing over the last couple of years, is that competition. Right? People want to win. People want it. That's why we're going back really hardcore to your mega open houses, because it's incredible. I've seen it with my buyers a lot too. When we walk through a house and I call the agent, or there's no offers in hand, all right, well, we'll think about it. Dude, if I would have said to them, they have 3 offers. Okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to offer? What do we need to do to beat it? But having that high traffic in like an open house does drive those multiple offers, but it's setting the seller's mindset at the beginning. Because if they have the mindset going in and you don't adjust it before you list, if they have the mindset that they're going to get 15 offers over list with no appraisal contingency and no closing costs or whatever, and they don't have it, and you're a week on market and you have 1 average offer, you're a shitty agent. you're the reason, right? But you have to explain to them where the market is, what it's doing. Here's what I'm seeing lately. So what I do is I pulled up like from March, the days on market, the list price to closing price, all that stuff. And then just recently, I couldn't even do an entire month. I just had to do like literally like a week. And the days on market has quadrupled. We're seeing price reductions. I should look up the number from March to the last 7 days. The price reductions, like there were 16 times more price reductions. So to show that to sellers and say, hey, just so you know, we're in a tough market. You have to list super conservative and you have to drive a lot of traffic, hope for a higher offer, but this is where your property is valued at, and set that expectation, because that's the whole thing, is walking in with the wrong expectation. It's a lot harder conversation to have on day 3 when they're calling you asking how many offers you have and you have to say none. Right? Like when they call you and you already set that expectation, like, hey, we talked about this. We knew this was going to happen. We anticipated 7 to 14 days to get an offer. And what we're going to do strategically is if we get to 14 days, we're going to reduce the purchase price every 7 days. We're going to do advertising. We're going to do open houses, whatever you have to do. But setting that expectation of like not waiting for the holy grail, I think is so imperative.
Yeah. And I mean, it's understanding the consumer mindset. I mean, like, I hate watching the news, but the reason why, and I don't even watch it, I just scam headlines. But just to see what is consumer sentiment, what is consumer psychology, because number one, most people, regardless of our markets, pays attention to national news. And at least when it comes to real estate, the news is usually 3 to 6 months behind. So you have the psychology of people that, know their friends or know their neighbors that sold 2-3 months ago. But if they sold 2 months ago, that property really sold 3.5 months ago, and they still have this, mental thought process that, we're going to get into this bidding war, and well, shit changes fast. And I remember, a few years ago, I was interviewed by Realtor magazine, and they were asking me, a lot about the crash and like what some of my regrets were, some of my learning lessons. And one of the things I said to them is I wished I would have, like, knowing what I know now today, I would have been so much more aggressive with what you're talking about right now of that education. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that I was educating them. I would educate them, but I'd be passive of, well, what do you want to do? Like, okay, hey, like, the market's coming down and down now, but what do you want to do? Well, knowing what I do right now, it's okay, here's what the market's doing. Right. Here's where you need to be. And if they say no, right, then I'd be very aggressive and very assertive with that. Because I saw people that kept chasing the ball down the hill. I mean, this is back 2007, okay. 2008, that they wouldn't listen, so they, instead of, again, they're chasing the ball down the hill. And I saw people lose $80,000, $90,000 in equity playing that game. And I saw people that had a lot of equity have to do within a short sale, all these different things. So that education piece, I always look at this of, almost like we're an attorney going in front of a jury and we're presenting our case.
100%.
And it's different in this past market that we're in, where it's like you throw a sign on the ground, it's going to fucking sell for what it sells for, whatever. Now the game in most markets is changing dramatically. And if we're not more aggressive with the education on this upfront, it can do a lot of damage.
It makes me so excited. It's going to weed out all the people that were like, oh, you can make $1 billion in real estate. And all, like, I call them the list and sitters, right? They literally put a sign in and then just wait and check their inbox. And it makes me so mad. I'm like, wait, that's not what you do. Like because we're very well compensated. Like as realtors, like I feel like we are well compensated, and I earn every fucking penny, like every single one. I don't care if it's a $6,000 commission, like you're welcome. I guarantee you 100% of the time they are better off because we put that work in. And the lazy agents and the new agents and the part-time, all of those they're either going to like get their shit together and they're going to get training and buy programs or join good teams or whatever, or they're going to get out because that's no longer the world that we live in. It's just not. So, and I'm really excited about, it'll be good day.
Yeah. One of my first mentors in this business would always tell me, now this was like 2005 and I was 23 years old, brand new. So it didn't make sense at the time, but he always said, great agents will make much more money in down and bad markets. And I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Right. And then, 2007 hit, and then 2008, then I was like, oh dude, it made like, then I understood it.
Yep.
To take the exact point of because it takes a whole different type of skill set when the average listing is taking 6 months to sell, and keeping them vested and keeping them bought in. And, it's a whole different game than like anybody that really hasn't been in the business pre 2012 really hasn't worked a normal market. We were just getting out of the longest bull market in recorded history, like of all markets of all time, so like whether people are in the financial markets or in the real estate market, it's like, if you haven't experienced anything before that, and I'm not saying that those people that haven't experienced anything before that can't last and adapt. I mean, I hadn't experienced 08 before 08 hit. But those that, aren't willing to do what it takes to adapt are going to become extinct.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And it's just like you said, yeah, you learn, you grow, and you adapt. And I had once, my very first job in real estate was collections. I knew nothing. I was a nurse before, like I was in the medical field. I don't know anything about real estate. But Ben was always in real estate. And so I was a collection agent for Select Portfolio Servicing, from by Credit Suisse. And I had one lady who was in Florida, and I was on the phone with her for 5.5 hours going through all 24 of her foreclosure files. And I was like, so you have a lot of houses. And she's like, well, she's like, I would literally, it was stated income. The credit requirements were 560 points. If you don't know what stated income is, that's like you walk in the bank, you're like, I make $1 million. You're like, okay, cool. And they write it down. No paychecks, no bank statements. It was horrible. She goes, yeah, it was stated income. She goes, I could buy a house and I could resell it 3 months later and make 30 grand. So I did it over and over and over. And she had 24 properties when it crashed. And she goes, I can't sell any of them. And so we worked out, there's all the, programs or whatever. And that's the thing too, is like, when I say well-rounded, I mean everything. You should know how to advise your clients on how to do a short sale. You don't make any money off of it, but I promise it'll come back to you. Like I've spent so much time helping people that don't qualify for a certain program or whatever, and they come back or they refer. Even like the loss mitigation, that's the main thing that I did. I ended up teaching the program it was called the HAMP, the Home Affordable Modification Program. You remember that one? Yep. But so we offered like the HAMP program, modifications, like repayment schedules. We did one where we could bump up to 6 payments to the end of the loan, a couple of different things that they qualified. But like me and Ben would always joke, because I would do loss mitigation to try and prevent people from losing their houses. And then he was like foreclosure guru. I'm like, okay, if I fail at my job, you're gonna have a lot of properties. but that's what we're seeing is uneducated, unexperienced agents who just think it's never going to end. There's no longevity. There's no foresight on the market. Whereas a well-rounded agent, they can see not only the opportunities in, with working with investors and how to prep and prepare sellers and how to properly list a home, and also how to help those the customers or the clients that are underwater, going through a divorce or whatever, like, because there's options, right? Like, I had, this is a long time ago, but I had one of my good friends is a divorce attorney, and he sent me a client and they were underwater on their house and stuff. And I was like, cool. Well, the rent, like your mortgage is $1,880. You can rent it for $2,800. If you want to claim it in the divorce, you make $1,000 a month. Oh, you can do that. Like, right. Cause all they were thinking was neither of us want to live in the house. We're underwater. We can't sell it. Like there's always options, always. And the rental market, I love the rental market so much, because the worse the economy is, the better the rental market is 100% of the time. And so that's why I love like the rent to own companies, and people don't even see know their options. And you have to know that, like when you're looking at somebody's entire life, right? They give you their entire life, their circumstances, their situation, personal, financial, everything. It's your job to piece those together and like create a work of art out of those puzzle pieces, And if that means that you tell them, like we have a listing now where I called her and I said that, I said, hey, I know, because she needed the equity of the house. She needed, I think it was like 80,000. She had like 140, but she needed 80,000 to pay off her debts and everything to make it work for her move. They got relocated across the country. And so I told her, I'm like, dude, you have a 2.6% interest rate, which I haven't even seen on a VA loan outside of the last 3 years. Your mortgage is $1,700 and I did a rent analysis on it and she can rent it for $2,750. And I'm like, your profitability is ridiculous. Like, do you want to keep the property and get a home equity line of credit? I had her talk to my lender. The home equity line would be, I think, $400 a month. So she's still profiting. And she decided not to do it. Now we have an offer on the house and we're going to close. But for her, me presenting that offer to her, saying, hey, I'm not going to make any money on this, because we sold her the house 2 years ago. She's been a client for a long time. But for her, and she called me and she said, hey, thank you. Like, I really appreciate that, because if it was a different circumstance or whatever, then that would have been perfect, making money, keeping a rental. And I told her too, I'm like, because she only owed like $300 on the house, it's worth $475. And I'm like, dude, like the value is always going to be there, and rentals are always good. But anyways, that kind of thing, right? Where you offer them all the options and everything real estate, or even the straw buyers, right? Like bring them, what did you call them? The investment buyers, what are they called?
Oh, like institutional
Like
investors.
yeah, like open door, or like those guys or whatever. But give them all of their options. And if you're good at what you do, you'll be the best option. Like I'm the best option every single time, 100% of the time. But the fact that I show them everything and then they tell me that I'm the best option, then they buy into me, right? Like when they sign the contract, like they're not agreeing for me to sell their house. They're like buying everything I just told them, and they should, because I deliver on it every time. But that's where the value comes in, of really knowing everything in the market, all real estate options for your buyers and sellers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. Yeah. I mean, I always look at it as, if you almost look at it like, okay, like think of us as like a general contractor, and I don't know, somebody hires us to come over their property. They have, I don't know, a leak or something going on. Well, like they want that leak fixed. So if I show up there, the more tools that I have in my, truck or van in my toolbox, that if I can identify what the problem is and then fix that problem right then and there for them, that's a better experience for them. So, all these different options that you're talking about, the way my mind processes it is.
Yeah, for real, dude. Yeah, you have a truck. I have an arsenal. Yeah, I have an arsenal of tools. No, exactly. And it's fun because once you're in the business for so long, because now I have my emails separated where I have 24 investors that are, I mean, not just random investors I found on Craigslist or whatever, but like people that I've worked with that I know have deep pockets and are always looking for a good deal. Like me and Ben right now can at any time go in. In fact, I used to make him do this like once a week, go through and comb the MLS and find good flips and send them to our investors. And I don't know how many millions of dollars we closed with just that. Just Ben spending 10 minutes, finding some good flips and emailing them. But you don't have those investors up first. Like that's why it's so important. I feel like that people in real estate are like, it's your life's mission. Like it's your study, it's everything, because you really do have to be so versatile and know all the different areas. Like I'm doing a investment training program right now because with the new agents we brought on in Colorado and here locally in Utah, that was one of the things where I said, okay, so now we're going to market this way and to an investor. And you don't understand, like when you're in the industry so long, that most people don't know how to work with investors. Like they don't understand that, but you can look, like, that's the thing that I tell everyone, like, dude, if you have internet, like there's no reason to ever not know anything ever. I heard a quote that said, in the year 2000, or let me think. Oh yeah. They said an African kid with an iPhone right now has access to more information than the president of the United States did in the year 2000. Like it's ridiculous. Like we have, like, there's no reason to not be good at anything. Oh, the story I told you earlier that you had mentioned about the cap rate. I had a guy, so at the beginning we did Realtor.com leads. So I had a guy call me from California, Tom Simpson, he's my favorite. And he called me, he's like, hey, I have a 1031 exchange. We come out to Park City and go skiing every year. I have properties out there. I want an investment property. I have 800,000 to work with, and I want a cap rate of 7 or higher. I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. I'll look at it. And I hung up, what the fuck's a cap rate? And so I Googled it and I found out how to do the math. And I think I actually bought a training program on it and stuff too, to learn how to do that. But by the time I called him the next day and my 9 hours and not sleeping that night, like he thought that I was the investment guru of Utah, which I am now. But like turn yourself into that. Like if somebody asks you to do something and you don't know how to do it, great, cool. Let's circle back, figure it the fuck out. Like if you have Google, like end of list, you can learn everything you ever need to know.
That's such an important point. Cause I mean, so many people get into, and I get it, cause I used to get this way too, get intimidated by what they don't know. And then they feel like they got to know all these things, where as long as you're resourceful, because it's, I don't know, after doing this almost 18 years now and closing, I don't know, 6,000, 7,000 properties over that time period with between myself and my team. It's like, dude, we're still learning new shit all the time and have things coming up in properties all the time that we haven't experienced before. And, like there's never gonna be a time when we know it all, but it's so not freaking out about that, but having the confidence that as long as you're resourceful, you can figure it out. Just like you said, that investor, you're like, okay, yeah, I'll get back to you.
Right.
You did your due diligence. You got back to them, figured out what you had to figure out, and you got it done, and the reason why I want to stress that point is, to anybody that's watching and listening, don't allow yourself, or if you're a team leader, broker owner, really just encourage to your agents of not just encourage to them, but teach them how to be resourceful. Cause there's really nothing more important, cause it's not about, how many resources you have access to. It's your resourcefulness that makes the difference in business.
Yeah. And I think even before that, like I see it with my agents because it's terrifying. Like me, I'm the perfect example. I came from nursing. I'm like, well, I know where the sternocleidomastoid is and I can pop a piggyback IV like blindfolded. But as far as like the appreciation, it was hard. It was really hard. And it was a completely different, almost a new language, really. Like words I'd never heard of and all these things. And going through real estate school, well, I always joke and say, like real estate school teach you enough to not go to prison and not lose your license, like end of list. Like you have to like hit yourself to wagons that matter. But I think with the people, it's not necessarily that they aren't resourceful, but it's the fear factor, right? For me, I had to change my fear factor of like, oh my gosh, what's the cap rate of this investor? He about to spend $1 million. I don't know what I'm going to do. He wants to make this much money a month. Because I felt like I'm responsible for his financial future. But instead of that, like turns out the excitement, like for me, it's a game. Like fucking master this better than the guy that went to school for it, like dig in, dive in and become the mat, like take that on as a challenge. You would do that. You'd be like, really? Don't know what a cap rate is? I'll show you. But it's hard because it isn't, it's terrifying. And it's a big decision. Like for me, I've always taken real estate very, very seriously because like, we're not selling used cars, like this is like the biggest decision that most people will make and the biggest financial investment that most people will make. Like it's huge. And I take that very, very seriously. And if you do take that seriously, which you should, you want to have as much information and as many tools in your arsenal as possible, like you said, to help make that a good decision. Because for me, like I wear that as like a goddamn tiara every day. Like all the people that, that I've helped, whatever, all the calls that I get, oh, we never would have been into a house. And that like, one of my favorite sayings is people will never remember what you said or did, but they'll remember how you make them feel. And if you show them that you like truly value their home and their purchase and the investment that they're making and do everything in your power outside of your personal gain to make that happen, I've seen it. And it's nice because I've been preaching it for years and only the last 4 or 5 years we've been in the business has it come to fruition, but that comes back to 1,000 times over. Like we have a handful of clients that have sent us millions and millions and millions of dollars in referrals because we did the right thing. We treated them right. We, again, gave them all of their options outside of our personal gain and treated their investment like our investment. And that'll pay back every single time.
Yep. Love it. Couldn't agree more. All right. So, earlier you talked about the stated income loans that they were doing, back in 2005, 2006, whatever. I guess they ended kind of 2000, late 2006, maybe
Right.
early 2007 when the market kind of peaked. But the argument that I hear over and over and over today from realtors is as to why this market correction or crash won't be as severe as the great financial crisis of 2008 is because there's not, all the subprime loans that were being done. Loans are being, there's that camp. It seems like there's two camps out there. These that believe it's going to be the worst crash of our lifetimes. And then those camps that are like, especially in the real estate world, I see this post from fucking realtors all the time of, the market's going through some shifts, but it's not going to crash. It's not going to be, like 2008, and so forth. What's your 2 cents? What do you?
So I've gone back. So I'm more, Ben's in here in my office and I'm a little more self-conscious when he's here because we differ on so many.
Ben, leave.
No, I'm confident now I'm right. Like it just takes so long for me to be proven right, but I always am. So he's on my side now, but for years we've debated about this. No, so I've actually switched. No, stay here. I'm kidding. Okay. Oh, we thought that was cold water. So I thought because a lot of the big banks and stuff, like not the first time, but more aggressively so than ever are holding like Blackstone is a good example, right? What do they own? A third, 20% of the market. I think that's better.
Yeah. I mean, Blackstone, since they sold imitation homes, I think, it's tough because they have so many sub funds.
Yeah.
I know that when you put the conglomerate, the big institutional investors like BlackRock, Blackstone, let's just say you put the top 5 together out there, just here in the US, it's around 200,000 single family attached units.
Yeah. But the thing is though, so initially my thought was there would not be as many foreclosures because I thought the big companies, like once they have foreclosure loans, will just hold them. Like it would make sense. So Blackstone, whose goal is I think they want to own 30% of the residential properties in the US, I think was their goal with all their subsidiaries and stuff. But my thought was they would hold them. Like, oh, cool, we have 20,000 foreclosures. We'll just sit on them, rent them, keep them. But how the lending institution works, it's so fascinating and unnecessarily complicated. But they, because every loan is in a pool, right? Like they're not able to go and pick onesie twosies. So we had with Bank of America and Chase, we had different types of loan pools, right? We have subprime pools and all these different things, but they can't go and pick, oh, we're going to keep this one, we're going to liquidate this one. It's not a onesie twosie. It's so big that they just in pools sell the entire chunk of, declining properties or whatever. So I don't think that they're going to retain as many properties. That is the one thing that's interesting that you say that about the adjustable rate mortgages and stuff. So for people that don't know, the shitty loans was one of the main reasons that everything happened. And not only the stated income, but the main thing that I saw when I was in collections was the ARMs, right? I had one guy in Nebraska whose mortgage was $1,100 for 5 years, $1,100 for 5 years. And then when his adjustable rate mortgage hit, he went from a 2% fixed to 2% plus prime. His mortgage went to $2,200. This guy made $12.50 an hour. Like, you can't do, that's not sustainable. Like, it's just not. And we dealt with all kinds of people. Like, a lot of the people were, oh, we bought our house for $600,000 and the neighbor next door with the same house sold it for $400,000, we're underwater. And I'm like, that's not a financial hardship. It's like a sob story. But there were genuinely people that, a majority of the people that I worked with, that their payment had changed and was no longer affordable. And so that's where I see that it's not going to be as aggressive, because that's not the case anymore. Right. And I tell people all the time, like, people ask me, oh, well, the prices are increasing, what's the market going to do? I'm like, how long are you going to be in the house? Because that's all that matters. Because if they're like, oh no, it's our forever house, I'm like, who cares? If it's worth $5 tomorrow, 100% of the time, over time, property prices increase. Like, if you look at like a zoomed in, I should have printed this out. If you look at like a zoomed in like bar graph of like housing prices from 2005 to 2012, right? It's a shit show. But if you zoom out and you look at from 1990 to 2015, it's a very steady increase. Always, like, prices always increase. And if you're going to be in the house for a long time, I tell people more than 5 years. If you're going to be there for more than 5 years, who cares? Right? If your house is worth nothing tomorrow, if the payment is affordable and it's a home that you want and you're going to be in there for a long time, it'll come back. It'll come back and it'll appreciate, and the equity will be there. So I feel like people, even if they want to sell or whatever, if the payment is sustainable, which a majority of the loans we've been doing since 2008 are sustainable, right? They put a lot of laws and stuff in place to ensure that happened. And so I think there's going to be a lot of people that might go into foreclosure because they're underwater on their house or whatever. But as far as the ability to afford the house, that's not going to be as drastic, which is nice.
Yeah, it'll be so interesting, because it's, before it was change, like you mentioned, change in ARMs and ARMs right now. I mean, ARMs are back and have been back for some time, and about 13%.
But there's restrictions and caps on them now, which there wasn't before.
Yeah.
And the frustrating thing is, like, the banker, they would sit and pitch these people that, oh yeah, it's 2% plus prime right now. Prime's like nothing. It's this. It's like, yeah, we're in a fantastic economy. Like, they're pitching the best case scenario dream, and it isn't what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, so, okay, we have better quality loans that are being done today, and nobody can argue that fact.
Right.
Being, it was like, I was one of the dudes that did the stated no income loans. And I was like, why the fuck are you guys selling me this, dude? Like, I'm making $10 an hour buying a house. And, luckily I got into real estate like 6 months later and made some money, was able to make it work. But, I was one of a small percentage, but we didn't have the insane inflation that's taking place. I mean, day by day, life is getting less affordable. So somebody can be in a 30-year fixed loan, but when you have food costs going up 3x per year, energy costs going up 3x per year, this crazy stagflation area that we're entering, and then now with job losses, starting to increase. Because I look at this as, at the end of the day, it's just hardships. And if a big enough percentage of people in any given area experience that similar hardship, that then leads to whatever crisis that we're going to experience. So yeah, it will be interesting to see. And I get both camps. I mean, I totally see how this could be worse than the Great Depression, with so many things going on, but I also get how and when I say I get how it couldn't be, I mean, at some point, I think that the wipeout's coming, it's just the Fed has been able to kick the can down the road longer than I think anybody's been able to ever fathom, so I mean, at some point the music stops,
Right.
but it'll be interesting times.
Well, and the interesting thing too is that people aren't factoring in, because they look at the housing market as like a mutually exclusive from the rest of the economy. Because really in 2008, it was a housing recession, a housing crash. Like there was other stuff involved, but what we're dealing with right now is completely different, because it's not only the market, right? We have COVID, we have lack of supplies, lumber, sheetrock, supply and demand. Like there's so many factors impacting it. And I don't know. I think it's going to be compounded to where I think all hell's going to break loose, but I probably shouldn't say that. But yeah, I think we're in for like a shit storm, and I'm so excited. I have a new umbrella.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll be good.
Yeah. I would say with everything that's going on right now, like a housing market correction or crash is the least of my worries.
I know.
I know
Right?
I'm going to be good there. Like that to me is like, it's like, there's other shit that keeps me up at night, but it is not those.
You know what though? But that's too why I love real estate, is because it's always, you can always make money. There's always, like, that's not true in every industry, right? Like I had a lot of friends that did sold makeup, or did like all little things or whatever, or trendy stuff, or worked in, clothing stores or whatever. And it's hard because like real estate is the only thing where no matter what, people are always buying, people are always selling. Get a piece of it. As long as you know what you're doing and whatever the economy is, you'll find it.
Yeah. So what do you, because with foreclosures, this is one of these things where, like HUD as an example, since about 2012 has been packaging up anything that meets the buy boxes to the BlackRocks of the world, and going to them direct, and now if you look at, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, I mean, all of them, it's like, dude, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, they all have big percentages of institutional investor ownership in those companies right now. And then with BlackRock right now, looks like they're striking a deal with the Federal Reserve where they're buying, big percentage of their $2.7 trillion of mortgage-backed securities. And, so I don't know how the foreclosure game is going to go, meaning I, as these foreclosures happen and tick up. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be anything like they were before, but they're still, as people experience hardships, like just two examples, right now we have an all-time high record default in the auto loan industry. So subprime auto loans, leases, record defaults taking place right now currently there. Then if you look at student loan debt, which is also at a record high, 1.7 trillion, over $1 trillion of that is still in forbearance. And that got pushed back until September. But when those start coming due again, I know that this administration has been talking about the student debt forgiveness, but if that doesn't go through, which I'm sure that's just political rhetoric,
right.
Not only do those start up again, but both interests on, undergrad and graduate degrees are more. But then we all experience, like every day, you go to the gas pump, you go to the grocery store, it's like everything, like I quit eating out altogether just because I'm like, every time we go out to eat with a family of 5, it's at least, $100-$150, at the restaurants that we eat at. And like, I don't even mind paying the $150, but the experience has just gotten shittier and shittier and shittier, right? So I'm like, there's just that, like we all feel it, but those are just, a few examples as to, why, as people experience more hardships, there's going to come a time where a percentage of the population is going to have to choose between putting food on the table for their family or making a mortgage payment.
Right.
But will those hit, the market, those that go to foreclosure or not? Or will it be like, when Zillow unloaded their 7,000 properties as other institutional investors that got the majority of those, but short sales is something that you can control. And one of my biggest regrets of that 2008 through 2012, so the great, GFC, as it's known as, Great Financial Crisis, was not doing more short sales. Now, we did a lot, but my business was more like 75% REO, 25% short sale. And I wish I would have reversed that. Not that I wouldn't have still taken on the REO and had the accounts. I would have wished I would have grown and been more intentional growing the short sell departments, because that's still us working with the homeowner that chooses us. We're not reliant on getting an assignment from a third party. So we're in full control over it. And you know, I know that you've been having I mean, this is your past world. You got a lot of friends that are in the short sell space, you know, working for, you know, for the bank still, B of A, Chase, all these different banks out there. You know, what's kind of the word on the street, you know, with those? And do you think that, like, are you starting to prepare for short sells?
Yes, for sure. So, so at Bank of America, from what I know, they, in December started to put ads out, and they started hiring in January and February for short sell officers and stuff. The training for that was pretty extensive, so I can see why they were hiring so soon. And then Chase and Bank of America, like I was telling you, I think it was a year and a half ago that he told me that they'd hired 88 attorneys, and they were, you know, ramping up and getting ready and start. Because I mean, the foreclosure process, like we had some in like Florida, some of the judicial states where like years, like we were like 18, 19, 20 months, people living there for free, we're paying their utilities. Like it takes a long time. People skate the system. But I've been preparing, like, as far as, well, since I started real estate, I've been preparing because, well, and that's the thing too, like we're preparing more on, like having those conversations with sellers that are underwater, or like having multiple options, like we had discussed. I think I'm going to put together a short sell package or something, because that's a complicated process that people don't know about. We had a good friend of ours in 2010, I think, responsible homeowners, whatever, but they were so upside down in their house, and he was transferred and they had to leave. And so she called me at the time, and I was like, here's what you do. Here's, you know, I'm like, because a foreclosure will kill you. So for anyone that doesn't know, after a foreclosure, it's 2 years from the foreclosure sale date before you're eligible for a loan. And it sounds like, no, oh, 2 years, I can wait 2 years. No, that's from the foreclosure sale date. That's after the bank takes it back, after they possess it, rehash it, resell, whatever, after. So until that property is reclaimed and resold and closed, that foreclosure is not complete. So your foreclosure start date might not even be for a year or 2 years in the future. Like it's a devastating thing. And then also anything that you still owe that the bank lost, you get a tax form for that at the end of the year, and you owe taxes. But I mean, it's a lot more challenging, a lot more complicated. And people are like, oh, just walk away. No, you won't. Like it will haunt you for all of your days. But you have to understand the process and know that. And even those conversations prepare people, like, hey, just so you know, like this is what you're in for if the foreclosure is, you know, the route you want to go. Short sales always a better option. It's easier on your credit. It's amicable. They write off a majority of the loss, and it's kind of like a part way as unlikely friends, I guess. But people have to know the process and how to do that and how to request those from the bank.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it goes back to what you're talking about earlier, being well-rounded, you know, and from the real estate agent side, you know, I don't want to say they're not difficult, but they're not as difficult as a lot of people make them out to be, but they can be. You got to have a process and you got to stick with it. You know, like my quickest short sale ever was 48 hours, which was like a one-time thing. Like that was
you
know, but my longest was 2 years, you know. I mean, average was, you know, 4 or 5 months.
Short sales, foreclosure, short sales.
Short sales, you know, right. So you know, I mean, it's a short sale because it's a short payoff, you know, right? Like it's shorting it's not a short period of time.
Right.
You know, and you know, you got to know how to process them. You know, there's a bit of a science to it. You know, what gets me is all these agents that I hear, not just agents, but, you know, media people, you know, in general, are like, well, people have so much equity in their homes. Okay, well, as this market turns, anybody that's bought in the last in 2020, you know, 2021, or maybe even Q4 2020, you know, like all those people are going to be fucked. There's not going to be equity in those homes. You know, I mean, maybe people that bought, you know, 2019, 2018, they might have, you know, some equity in their homes. You know, but, you know, what are the people that are buying today? You know, that like in my market, anybody that bought in the last 6 months is already, I mean, there's not a huge percentage, but there is a percentage of people that are already way underwater. And if you've been in this game long enough, you know that those situations come up where, you know, people buy 6 months later, whatever reason, maybe death in the family, relocation for job, whatever, where they got to resell, you know, in that length of time. Not everybody's able to hold on to the property for a decade, you know, right?
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of things, I mean, this is off the subject, but because we would settle, so second mortgages, and and HELOCs, those kind of things, we would settle those for pennies on the dollar. So we knew we were in second position. We weren't getting anything if we went to foreclosure. So we'd settle those for nothing. But buyers, sellers, they don't know that. They don't know to call and be like, dude, I can't afford the payment. I'm behind. Oh, your $60,000 second mortgage in the next 3 days, could you pay $6,000? We'll settle that in full. Right? Like there's always options, but it's like we're both saying, I guess, learning the industry, knowing that every single thing is so valuable in your like in your arsenal, you know, to present as options and to help these guys. And that's the thing too, like that's one of my biggest things that people don't even offer or suggest, like, is keeping the property and renting it. Or like, unless you have a really horrible interest rate, you can almost always rent a property for a lot more than what your mortgage is. Like the rental market is stupid what people will pay. And yeah, just being well rounded and getting educated.
Are you guys seeing corrections in the rental market where you're at all?
No.
Yeah.
So the rental market is hotter than ever. In fact, actually over the last month, it's been even crazier. So I monitor stuff like how many, so on like Zillow and Rentler and a bunch of the websites, people can submit applications, or they can go in and they can e-apply to properties like blind. And those, so I look at like the application amount per, like how many applications are submitted per properties, the searchability. And then there's a formula they do to calculate like the estimated reasonable rent amount per property. The calculated rent amounts are all staying super steady and, you know, increasing for about 2 years in there, like from 2019 to probably current, or at least early 2022. Rent prices were increasing by, at least in my market, 14 to 22% a year, like stupid, like almost like on par with properties. The typical increase for a rental is, you know, 8 or 9%. But again, that's why I utilize the rent to own programs as like almost all the time, because that's a perfect thing where it's like, okay, cool, your rent is locked in. Like for 5 years, you know what you're gonna be paying every year. It's going to increase 5% a year, which is well below the national average. And love it or hate it, it's transparent. You know what you're getting into and you can plan ahead. Because back when we were like paycheck to paycheck, I remember we got on the knock on the door one time at month 11 on our rent. And I was like, oh crap, what's the new? And they'd increased our rent by like $400 and we were only paying like $1,200. Like that mystery is like that's not a fun thing to wait for. So having that transparency of like a Home Partners or a Dream America or something, where they give you the anticipated rents for as long as you're in the property, up to 3 years, 5 years, however long that is, being able to make that decision and know ahead of time what your options are is fantastic. Because I don't know another property that you could walk into with a property management company and you're like, hey, so what's my rent going to be for the next 5 years? They will laugh in your face. Whatever they feel like increasing it to, that's the number, and you can decide to stay or leave. But yeah, so the rental market, I feel like it's staying just as strong. I can't wait to see. I'll send you a text in a couple of months and let you know, but I feel like it's going to be even stronger. Cause like I said, the worse the economy is, like I'm going to buy a Walmart stock. Walmart does better. Rentals do better. Like a down economy is a very clear indicator of more people needing rent, and they will afford it. Like saying they can't afford it is speculative, but they will. Like you have to have a house. Like there's not another option, right? So a lot of what our people are doing here is the multi-generational housing, right? Like I have a lot of people, especially the last 2 or 3 years, that are, hey, it's me and my husband and our 2 kids, and my parents are going to live with us. Or, you know, me and my sister. Like a lot of people are kind of bunking up and, you know, rooming because rents are getting higher and higher. And I don't see them coming down because people are paying them. And rent is the reason why rent is so great in a down economy, is because they don't have like the safety and security and protection that homeowners do. They just don't. 3 days, get the fuck out, right? The sheriff will be there, they'll get your shit out, they'll lock you out. Like we don't have to go through a court process and a hardship and the 30-day notice and 60 and me back in the day calling them every day asking to pay their mortgage. They either pay or they get out, and they know that. And so they do, and they'll pay whatever the rent is because they have to be in place. And if they have to, you know, have their sister come live with them, or if they have to rent out a room in the basement or whatever, like they'll do it. And it sucks and it's hard and it's, you know, whether you think it's fair or not or whatever, that in the industry, it is what it is. And so I anticipate rent prices not taking the huge jump that they did, but I think they'll steadily increase at like 5 to 8% increase, and they'll stay super strong. And we're going to still see this. So I'm seeing an average of 18 inquiries and 7 applications on the average rental dwelling. So not apartments, townhouses, houses, right? Condos. But it's, yeah, I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. If anything, I think it'll probably get worse. Because the more people can't buy, right? Like, or they're priced out of the housing market. Like, so to increase an interest rate by 3%, right? So to go from like a 2% to a 5% interest rate increases your payment, like on a $500,000 house, $700. That's like not affordable for most people, you know? So people that can get these $500,000 houses because their payment was affordable when the interest rates change, now they're qualified for much less. And, you know, renting is the next best option, and they'll pay the rent to have a house.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it's gnarly. Well, and I mean, real estate is very hyper local. So,
Sure.
you know, it's going to be market by market. I mean, we're starting to see, at least on the higher end rentals. When I say higher end, I mean, you know, stuff above $2,000 a month, you know, so I guess average to high end, you know, that, you know, maybe was going for where they could get $3,000 a month. They might, but that was like top of the market for that property. Well, we're starting to see them, you know, go for $2,200 a month, you know, but the more affordable range, that 1,000, 2,000 is just, which almost is non-existent. You know, but what we're seeing now is always, you know, massive institutional investors, dude. I mean, they're buying full subdivisions from builders and turn them into full rentals, you know, right? Like,
do you
I
have,
mean,
do you have
they're
America
just
Homes
everywhere.
for Rent? Do you have America Homes for Rent there?
I don't know for sure. I don't really pay attention to that, but I'm like, as far as these, so what I'm seeing everywhere pop up here in the Phoenix metro area is these, you know, little, I don't know what they are, like 1,000 square foot. They're single family attached, but like the backyard is maybe like 5 feet deep of a fence, you know, right? Like
they're not for the bathroom,
they're gated, you know, and they have a pool, but they're all just rentals.
Yeah, that's what America Homes for Rent does, is they buy communities. They have an entire place in Saratoga Springs out here. There's like 240 homes, and they're all rentals, and that's, you know, what they do, and that's their jam or whatever. But I've seen a lot of the price adjustments, like what you're talking about, like where like the 3,000 whatever, that drop a lot. And I feel like the ones that I'm seeing that are in that scenario are almost always individuals.
Yeah.
Right. Like I have 2 rental houses or whatever, and they heard their buddy next door told them they can get $5,000 for their 1,000 square foot, whatever. And everyone's, you know, listening to their friends or whatever. So they do price them just ridiculous. But if you look at like the formula and the algorithms used by bigger companies, so how almost all property management companies base their rent amounts is they take the purchase price of the home, and they take what a zero down mortgage payment would be with a historical national average percentage. I think they use like 5.2% or whatever. So they calculate what that mortgage would be on that house, and then they increase it depending on the institution, anywhere from 8 to 15 to 20%, right? So if they continue to use that formula, then as prices decrease, right, then theoretically the rent amounts would decrease. But I don't know if they're gonna stick to like, oh, what the appraised value of the property right now is, or what they bought it for. That's where I'm not sure. But as far as what I've seen so far, it's been very steady as far as slow rental increases and just as many people applying. That's what I was watching the most, because there was a period actually in 2018, right before COVID, where there were a lot fewer applicants and a lot fewer inquiries on rentals. And looking back, it's I believe it's because that's when, you know, interest rates started to get really good, and a lot more people started to buy. But again, the worse the economy gets, the better the rental market is, the better, you know, Walmart's going to do, all the thrifty stuff. Like, you know, Nordstrom's will be empty, but
yeah, it's, you know, like I've always tried to, it's like follow, you know, smart money, if you will. And that's what I've always tried to do. And it's like, all right, like what's Warren Buffett doing right now? Okay, well, like, dude, he's sitting on the sidelines with an insane amount of cash, waiting to see how things pan out before he goes. You know, he sells when everybody's buying, and he buys when everybody's selling and panicking, right? Well, then when we look at like on the real estate side of it, what am I watching BlackRock do? And the reason why I talk about BlackRock a lot is, you know, the largest asset management company in the world, you know, with, you know, what, almost 15 trillion under management today. But out here, it's like, dude, they're buying, not only are they buying insane amounts of single family attached property, which historically for these institutional investors, they bought apartment buildings, they bought commercial properties. We only really saw them buy single family during like 2011, 2012, when real estate was 50 cents on the dollar. Now though, and not just now, for the last several years, they've been swallowing it up at just insane amounts. But I see them also buying up like every storage complex out here. Like they're buying up every one of them. Everything is now converting to a CubeSmart, which is owned by BlackRock, or not owned by, but they're the number one institutional investor in CubeSmart. And to your point, during recessions, storage units, because people need a place to store their shit when they lose their properties or whatever, and rentals, go up on all things, who knows if that will, I guess there's things may be different, can be different, but it is like this weird generational thing where I was listening to like Robert Kiyosaki talk about this the other day, and this is a dude, I don't know how old Robert Kiyosaki is, but in his 70s or whatever now.
Well, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was like 21. He has to be old.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's been through, he's been through a few of these. Right. And he's like, he goes, every generation, younger generation thinks this time will be different. And he's like, no time is different.
Right.
So, we'll see, but the good news, and to your point, is there's always massive opportunity regardless of how this stuff shakes out.
Amen.
Yep. All right. Well, I know we went long here. Any last things that you want to share with anybody, or any last thoughts about, again, what you're doing to prepare, or any last piece of advice for people to be able to make sure that they thrive, and don't become a statistic during these changing times?
Yes. Learn, grow. Really, like, we're in our cars all the time as agents. Like, there's no reason that you shouldn't know everything. Like, join a podcast, learn, like, there's always things that you can be like learning and developing and stuff. So just like make it a study, make it a mastery, because if you do, like, there really is no way to fail, honestly. And if anyone really doesn't know what they're doing and really does have the hunger and the drive and the motivation, and like the work ethic to succeed, find a good team, find a good partner, find somebody, because people know what they're, Josh, freaking his agents, that he has a formula. They're successful. He knows what they're doing. They log in, they have their trainings. It's a formula, it's a system. And so if you don't know it all, or if you don't know how to learn it all right, then find somebody. Like, when me and Ben first partnered with my initial mentor, and it was a 25% split, I'm like, thank you. That's 75% more than I would have made. Like, join a team and just learn and grow and dive into every single thing real estate that you can find. And because knowledge is power, and you'll be ultimately successful the more information you have.
Yep. Love it. And then, I know that you've got a lot of great free trainings out there. You've got some great programs out there too. I mean, I put, all my agents through your rent to own program.
You're welcome.
I mean, you taught us everything that we know about that. And I've learned through that. So your guys is, mastery program there with RTP, right to purchase program is the best, hands down. I mean, I haven't yet put one of my agents through that hasn't, if they follow it, that hasn't put a deal into contract in 10 days. Like, it is.
I know exactly. That's what I was talking about. I'm like, no, like, it's not a question, or like it's not a mystery. Like, if you do it, like, if you build it, they will come. Right. And we've had the same thing. Every single agent that we've ever worked with, if they follow the formula, like, they're successful. And that's why even years ago, when I was anticipating the recession that Ben swore would never come, it's here, babe. That's why I always did love Home Partners, is because it's in every market, like, golden magic bullet or whatever. So
I mean, like, one thing, like,
delightful.
Yeah, man, when I know I meant to bring this up earlier, but one thing, it was like, okay, when we first started doing HPA and we learned it from Home Partners, and it's not just Home Partners in America. It's right. That's the one that we do most business with, but there's Divvy, there's Dream America, there's, a lot of them out there. But it's like, okay, those that need a little credit, need a little TLC and love, that it can help them have that bridge of getting into a property, and then we can put them into our credit repair and get those guys going, then, and it's also been great for our reload. I'm in a big reload market. So people that are like, well, I'm moving, I don't know, from the Midwest to Phoenix, Arizona, 2,000 miles away. I want to kind of take this property for a test drive. It's worked great for them. It's worked great in the last 2 years for us, for our buyers that were very, 20% down conventional buyers that just couldn't play the game because they were getting beat out by all these cash offers. So allowed them to be essentially turn into a cash buyer. Now what's also, so it still helps all those people, but where it's been amazing now is all these buyers that are coming to us of, yeah, we want to buy right now, but we're so worried about the market crash. We're like, well, here's a hedge where like you can go find the property you want right now, get it bought. Right. But then, I mean, you can wait for up to 5 years to purchase that property back with this expense right to purchase it. I'm like, if the market crashes, you just wipe your hands.
All the upside and none of the downside. I'm like, you lock in a purchase price. So, and the people that have been buying the houses that I've been helping them with through Home Partners, like over the last 2-3 years, I had one guy in Syracuse, his right to purchase price was $334 and he sold for $475. And he was qualified. We have a Hill Air Force Base here in Utah. And so he relocated. He said that he's like, I can't commit to a 30-year mortgage when I haven't even been to Utah ever. Like, so he bought it, I think sight unseen or whatever. And he called me and he's like, hey, so I just got transferred again with the military, but I have a lot of equity in my house. So he bought it with his VA loan and I listed it for him the next day and he made a ton of equity. So when I talk to people, I'm like, yeah, and it's great. Like if the market keeps going as it is and you have a lot of equity, great. You get a fantastic loan, no mortgage insurance, you're welcome. And if not, again, cool. Put your notice in, get your deposit back, and I'll help you buy the house on the street and save $100 grand. Like it's a risk-free thing that people are loving. And what you're going to be seeing. So next year, when we do this podcast, Josh, you're going to say, so Kim, how have you been utilizing Home Partners with sellers? Because that's what we're doing now really is with sellers saying, hey, I've run the property through Home Partners. It's eligible, it's qualified. We're going to blast it and try and get a resident in here. And that's going to be the best offer. It's a cash offer, no appraisal contingency, 10-day due diligence, or if it was built after 2006, 0 due diligence, 2% earnest money, hard upon acceptance. And that's a pitch to sellers. We're like, hey, I have this investor. I know how to get them to buy this house. I find a good resident, right? And for somebody who's in 3 or 4 or 5 months, who's when they call you, they're like not excited about the money they're going to make, but they're in an absolute panic and fear, wondering what's going to happen. For a seller to hear that, to say that you have that option coming in and that's what you're working to do, that's huge, right? Who else is going to say that in a listing presentation? Everyone else is going to be like, we're going to do an open house and we're going to take pictures with a drone. Cool. I also have a cash investor that'll give you like the golden ticket. You're welcome. Yep. So I'll let you know next year how that goes.
Love it. Where's the best place, Kim, for people to learn about all this stuff that you're doing? And again, I know you have a lot of great free trainings like we've already talked about, but where's the best place for people to check you out?
So we can have all of our stuff on agenttraininghub.com.
agenttraininghub.com. All right, I'll make sure to have that in below. If you guys scroll down, I'll have a hot link so you can just go link right to it, make it super easy to check out. And Kim, truly appreciate you taking time to be here, man. This has been awesome.
Thank you. Till next time.
Yep. 100%. And those watching and listening, as always, truly appreciate you. Keep kicking ass and we'll see you next time. Peace.